There is a whole world of cinema to be discovered. You just have to overcome that 1-inch barrier known as subtitles. Welcome to our foreign cinema podcast, That 1-Inch Barrier, with myself, Nick LaBarrow, Josh Barry, and Kieran Griffiths. Gentlemen, for about the third time this morning, how are we?
Good. A little dusty. I think it's become a bit of a tradition at this point that one of us has to do the podcast hungover.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
as Josh pointed out, it's usually the person who picks the film. So I'm going to have to do a lot of talking, and a lot of it's probably not going to make much sense.
I tell you what as well, like, imagine watching these movies hungover as well. That would be such a visual experience. Josh, you doing well?
Yep, good mate, good, yep. I am
Excited?
not dusty today. We'll leave that to Kieran. So,
I think I've got us all covered.
yeah, good on you.
We're all feeling quite good. So, well, let's firstly thank you all for watching. If you're watching on YouTube, we appreciate it. And if you could subscribe, it supports us. But if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever, we appreciate all the support you show. It is going from strength to strength. Amoris Pedos was a very a well-received episode. And then obviously our Oscar series with All Quiet on the Western Front is going gangbusters. So thank you for real big ones.
Yeah.
So
We
y'all
made
like
it,
those, y'all like those prestige Oscar films. And actually, we'll briefly point out, then we just spoke about this probably a couple of weeks ago, Edward Berger, who directed All Quiet on the Western Front, is being tapped to do the next Jason Bourne film, which I think could be pretty exciting. Yeah. I think, I know it doesn't necessarily cover foreign cinema, but he's a director who the visual flair of All Quiet we loved. So I think that'd be pretty fun. So, but let's get back to what we know and what we're good at discussing, or at least we think we're good at discussing, foreign films, with Kieran's pick for this month. And I guess we should say picks for this month. So what are we talking about today, man?
Did we sort of figure that out after we finished the podcast last time? Or
I don't remember.
I can't remember,
I can't remember, yeah.
Anyway, so we're covering a 2007 Spanish found footage horror film called REC. REC, record. And because it's only about 80 minutes long, even though all three of us regularly complain that movies are too long and that we've covered a lot of long films on the podcast, rather than going, oh wow, an 80-minute film, that's great. Let's just do a short one. We went, let's do the sequel as well. Let's do 2 films.
So get it out to 3 hours.
Yeah, so we have nothing to complain about. We do this to ourselves.
We do. At this point, we do.
But this was a film that I saw probably, I was still in high school, so it would have been at least 10 years ago now. And I don't even know how I came across it. I think I was probably just looking, up online, scariest films of all time because, like most people, I was an edgy teenager at one point and still am in some regards. So I wanted to watch really scary films, and this came up a lot. And, having watched it, I can see why. And then the other film we're covering is the sequel REC 2, which was released in 2009 and pretty much takes place almost immediately following the events of the first film. I think the opening shot of REC 2 is the final shot of REC 1.
So,
it's something that I really wanted to revisit. I sort of picked it around Halloween. I thought a horror film we haven't covered on the show would be a good one. And I think horror is one of those genres that really does translate well across languages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Things that are scary in Spanish are scary in English.
Absolutely,
It works either way. So, yeah.
And I think it's fun for me as well because I was similar. I remember seeing REC pretty much. I saw the American remake first, Quarantine, which came out in 2008, which then obviously through that and being 13 when that came out, I was like, man, that's cinema, that's so good. And then I was like, let's watch what it was based on. And REC was, I will say, is significantly better than Quarantine. And then I saw REC 2 when it came out on DVD. I was working at Blockbuster at the time. And I remember having fond memories of both these films. So it'll be interesting to talk about them. But I like the idea as well that, like you said, horror is just so universal. And I think between the three of us, we're actually quite big horror buffs. We do like horror films a fair bit. So it's I think watching this movie again and having a bit more of a taste for the genre, it was quite a fun experience. Was this your first time?
I hadn't. I'd forgotten, but I had seen it before. Once I started it,
the first one at least.
Yeah, the first one. I hadn't seen the second one,
and
I haven't seen Quarantine.
Yeah, and you're not missing out. To be totally honest with you, it's pretty much a shot-for-shot remake. Ultimately, but somehow still manages to be 20 minutes longer.
And worse.
So,
God bless America.
Yeah.
But so I was saying it's 2007 film, found footage genre as well, which is, I think, again, quite interesting to look at. Obviously Blair Witch Project was sort of, the the beginning of the mainstream of that, I
When
guess.
was that? Is that
90
like 95 or 96 or
99?
something?
Yeah, late
Oh,
90s, I
Yeah,
feel.
late
Blair
90s,
Witch.
I believe. Let me do some live investigating here.
And then Cloverfield probably came out not long after this, I feel. Cloverfield was-
2008, and then Paranormal Activity was the same year as well,
So
2007.
the late 2000s was really the found footage era.
99 for the Blair Witch Project. So, but it's kind of interesting that, this movie, Wreck, and Paranormal Activity, both movies that are quite highly regarded, both critically and for audiences in the found footage horror genre, did come out in the same year. Two completely different countries, two completely different types of found footage horror as well.
Yep.
How do we feel about the found footage horror genre in general?
I was going to say, because you guys probably wouldn't have been watching Blair Witch at the cinema, would you?
No.
On account of being two, no.
No, unfortunately not. No.
I saw that at the cinema, and it was like nothing.
Yeah.
Anyone had seen before. When that came out, there was such buzz about this new kind of way of filmmaking and how scary that made
Nice.
it was really big. So and then obviously, as we just said, it
kind of took a while to
It
find
took
its footing, like 8 years later, I guess. But
I've liked it.
Yeah.
I've liked it. I haven't seen one for a while.
No, it's sort of been a bit of a dying breed, but I think we all got a bit sick of it with, the million paranormal activity films that we got. But I think this is one of the best examples of it because it's like it looks good, it's enjoyable to watch, which a lot of found footage films aren't necessarily.
totally, yeah.
But one of the biggest issues is that logic gap of, if it's a found footage film, why were they recording?
Yeah.
And
Why do they keep going?
Why do they keep recording? And how did the footage get out? Whereas I think Rec answers all those questions really well. So in the first film, to provide a bit of a synopsis of the films, Manuela Velasco, who is the main character in this, playing Angela, who's like a television reporter.
Yes.
She's doing a show where she goes to different places while everyone else is asleep. And does a show about it. So she's doing a show with like at a fire department. And then they get called in to a building, a woman's behaving erratically and they need to sort of break down the door, get into the apartment and find out what's going on. And she's there with her cameraman and we see everything from the point of view of her cameraman. And he's a news cameraman. And when things start, getting a bit weird and a bit crazy, she tells him to keep recording. So it makes sense in the context.
And because there's definitely times through there I'm like, I wouldn't be holding that camera still. But she's constantly, you got to keep recording.
This is our story. Because to me, it always struck me as Angela was someone, because she's doing this late night show called While You're Asleep. And it seems like she's trying to find the story. She wants to break out of this. And I think that's very noticeable in the opening scenes when she's like doing the introductions and stuff. She's kind of like, what are we doing here? Like these guys they just eat and sleep. Even though she's like, well, how great would it be if like the alarm rang and the firefighter's like, no, because if that means something bad's happening. And she's like, fine, I guess. So as soon as she gets there, the excitement of, and the gradual intensity and like where both these movies go, her intensity just absolutely just like she at one point literally just looks like camera's like, do not stop fucking recording, and it's kind of like it's great,
but like
so it adds context to why it's found.
And like there's a cop in there who will tell him to stop recording, so he'll put the camera on the ground but leave it rolling. So we get like these different ways that the camera is used.
It's really cool.
He'll use it to sort of like look over a window that he can't see over the top of, and then he'll look back at the recording. They rewind the footage at one point.
Fantastic. I forgot they did that. That was such a cool moment.
Because Angela wants to see something that happened because she didn't quite see it.
Yeah.
So he asks her to rewind the footage, and the film just rewinds itself, plays forward that bit again, and then fast forwards
back to the present.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's I think it's done really, really effectively.
Absolutely. And then just to add a little bit more to the synopsis as well, once they go into this elderly lady's room, she's covered in blood, she's behaving very erratically, and she begins to attack the security guards and the firefighters, which leads to a, I guess you could say zombie-esque sort of outbreak. But then the movie is, it's a horror where there's like shitload of jump scares, like there's zombies jumping out of corners and screaming, but it's kind of like with the journalism side of it, an investigative thriller. They're little bits of information are drip fed throughout the film as to what these people are infected with, how it's spread. There's these what you would assume as off kilter lines of dialogue that don't mean anything that come back to tenfold later in the film, especially regarding a little girl and her father and why he's not in the building and whatnot. So for me, it's a very tight screenplay as well, considering it could just be it's literally 77 minutes long, including credits, and it's a found footage zombie film. It could just be throwaway. But there is so much that happens that I really, really enjoyed. And I think for me, it's a Spanish film, and the Spanish connection, and I researched this just to make sure, is that one of the revelations later in the film has to do with spirituality, religion, and possession. And Spain is a strong Catholic society. Like, that is their number one religion there. So that to me is kind of like where any other zombie film would just be virus outbreak. Someone's made a virus that's turned everyone into zombies, or they even at some point say rabies. To me, when it becomes a possession feature in a way, I was like, okay, that to me screams a bit more about what distinguishes this as more of a Spanish film than a American film as well.
Yeah. And I think it's really interesting because up until probably the end of the first film, we're not really told what's causing this. It's very similar to like the rage virus in 28 Days Later.
Yes,
like that sort of zombie that's hyper aggressive and like more fast moving and
sprint at you and stuff. Which creates some terrifying scenes in this movie,
and it makes them so much more scarier than your Walking Dead shambler type zombies. But it's only when we get to the end of that film that we sort of learn that this could be something more spiritual, like a possession sort of thing. And then Rec 2 kind of gives us a lot more background info on that.
Totally, yeah.
But I think both are equally scary.
I agree.
I think the idea of something that's just on the cusp of realism, that, we could have this virus like rabies that, advances to the point where it infects humans really quickly and causes them to, bite each other and spread it around. Like, that's almost believable. That's scary because of that.
Yeah.
And then in Rec 2, we find out that it's, a young girl who became possessed by the devil, but then spreads that possession through the blood contact, which makes sense because obviously, blood is a big thing in religion. And that's equally scary as well because it's, the concept of being possessed is terrifying.
Yeah.
So I think both approaches work really well at being scary.
And I think that to me kind of almost puts it in the religious horror genre to an extent, right? Which is, I think, is more of an emerging genre. It's kind of getting a revitalization the last sort of couple of years, but Rec was doing this, 15 years ago, which is really exciting. So, but I think
just a bit. Just on that religion as well, because on just a bit of trivia for you. So one of the major inspirations for the first person survival horror was a game called Outlast.
Oh yeah.
Hang on.
No.
Or was it the other way
hang
around?
on, the other way around.
Yeah, Outlast was
the other way
inspired
around.
by...
Because Outlast came out in 2013, but
makes sense.
I guess if you haven't played Outlast as well, it's you have a video camera. A lot of it is in night vision as well, which the last 10 or so minutes of Rec is a fantastic use of night vision as well.
And you're defenseless as well, which these characters are, because it's basically just these residents of the apartment, the news crew, one policeman and a couple of firemen.
Yeah.
That's right.
So they're pretty defenseless against
defenseless,
these, possessed people.
Yeah.
Whereas in Rec 2, we follow a SWAT team. And that's filmed from the perspective of their like body cams. So again, it
really
works
cool,
in the context.
Totally,
But just to touch on it briefly, I think that is probably why the second film didn't work as well for me, is because they felt, there's four highly trained, SWAT team members with assault rifles and shotguns. It takes away that tension a little bit.
Okay.
And for what realism, I guess, the first film had in that scenario, they're quarantined in a building, like you said, they're defenseless and no one knows what's happening. This SWAT team go in kind of knowing what's happening.
Yeah.
And they still get, like slice bullets, they still get swarmed pretty well. Yeah. In fairness, there is one scene in the second film, and I think I'll call it the bathroom scene with a certain cornered SWAT guy, which is like one of the coolest fucking things I've seen.
Yeah.
What a way to go. And that shot's awesome because he's looking in the mirror and his helmet cam's on, so you see his face and he's freaking out. Yeah. But in the corner of the mirror, you see the zombie breaking down the door, and it's kind of like,
that's a good shot.
Fuck, what am I going to do? Put a grenade in my mouth, I guess. That's kind of awesome. Like
he was my favorite character.
He was awesome. But at the same time, I think touching on what you were saying before, to me, it's one of those things where so much of the tension in the first film is the uncertainty, and I like the investigative element of it as well. I think the drip feeding of the info and trying, rather than just being like scared of what zombies, for lack of a better word, are around what corner, the idea of being like, well, we don't know what it is. What can it turn into? And that last 10 minutes of Rec, when you kind of see the full amalgamation of what this possession is, you kind of like, that's terrifying as well. And it's fun. The religious aspect's fun, but there's a science element too. Like you kind of find out the Vatican are involved in some way, which again, a very Spanish thing to have in your film. And sort of there's a mixture of science and religion. They're kind of they're organizing exorcisms and stuff, but the Vatican, I guess you can call them Vaticans. There's like spies almost. They're like the Pope's exorcist sort of shit. Imagine Russell Crowe in one of these films.
Right, his little Vespa.
But they want to try and get the blood of this girl that they were talking about, who was initially possessed, because the priest who was there, they find a tape recording where it's like, we've managed to split the enzymes and we've got a thing of the blood and we're going to be able to cure this possession. So it's kind of like, as the movie goes on and then what it leads to in the second one, I'm like, the story's fantastic. It's really well done. But the second movie does lose a bit of that tension. It's more of an action film, I guess, than a horror film.
I'm gonna be on the other side though. Yeah, because just this time around, I preferred the second.
Interesting.
I don't know if I'm just a little bit over the zombie I'm not sure. But up until the kind of last 10 to 15 minutes of that first one, for me, I was a bit throwaway with it. I wasn't invested.
Right.
I thought that last 10 minutes in Rec 1 is what that film for me is all about. It's
probably the final 10 minutes of the first film are probably some of the scariest 10 minutes in a movie.
It's brilliantly done.
It's because you just, they're in this apartment with, photos on the wall and strings of yarn attaching them.
Well, this apartment, it's a penthouse, basically. It's a top floor. It's behind a reinforced door, and all movie, everyone keeps talking about, the things that were happening upstairs.
Yeah.
Is this got to do with the things that were happening upstairs? So this whole entire apartment block is aware of the shenanigans that are happening upstairs.
Yeah.
So once you're finally in that room, it's terrifying.
Yeah.
And the camera moves so slowly. And you're like, God damn it. Like, I would much rather you just quickly pan around. You know, when you're in like a dark place, like, I'm just going to turn the torch really fast. This cameraman's like, no, we should record everything.
And it's all in night vision as well.
Night vision. Or just before the night vision, when that jump scare that breaks the light scared the shit out of me. It was great. And I was watching it with headphones too. So I was oh my God.
The creature design of the final monster in the first film. That is horrifying.
Terrifying. Hey.
Even Susie was like, that's really well done.
What was the budget on this film as well?
I think it's about $2 million from memory.
$2 million, and they made $32 million at the box.
Horror has got to be one of the best genres for like low budget to high returns.
Blumhouse have been doing it for years. They know what they're doing. But I think that's what's kind of great about this is that we see it so many times. How many shitty $2 million horror films come out of America? How many times have you gone on Apple TV or your Telstra box or whatever, and on demand is this worst post you've ever seen that's like, I got murdered by the Devil 7 or some shit.
Starring Nicolas Cage.
I mean, that would be the only reason I watch it, to be totally fair. But these guys, like these two directors in Spain who had a couple of movies beforehand, nothing too crazy, got given $2 million and made this and made the most out of a single location. I think the most noticeable thing about the single location is this stairwell that is used fantastic in chase scenes, which is used to scare when a body falls down and smacks the ground with just ferocious ferocity. The creature designs, the gore, nothing scarier than little kids who are zombies or possessed.
When that happens, it's like, why is it always scarier when it's a little?
The way she like, because she bites once you find out what the little girl's up to, and she bites on the way she like scurries up the stairs. I was like, holy shit! I was like, just shoot it. And then realized,
shoot the child in the face.
No one has a gun. But I think what this movie does incredibly well is kind of, no matter how infuriating some characters can get, you kind of really do feel bad for everyone, especially the firefighters and especially Angela, who you kind of like, you want them to get out, but as the movie goes on, the likelihood of it happening goes away. You kind of like, oh shit, this is going to be a brutal film to watch. Where I do agree. I think that goes away in the second film a little bit. But that's where I distinguish them as like the first one to me is a genuine horror film. The second one's a bit more of an action film. The set pieces are bigger. It's grander. I think they had a bigger budget too.
I'm sure. I mean, you can instantly tell.
5.6 million. It's almost 3 times the budget.
Instantly tell with the cinematography and stuff on the second
totally.
one. I was like, wow, this actually looks
multiple
really nice.
point of views, a camera. Because I guess
multiple cameras rather than the one.
Yeah.
I think as well, I didn't care for the characters as much in the second film.
Totally.
I think the first film, you've got all the residents of the apartment. You've got Angela. You've got one of the firefighters who's sort of like the last of the group to, go through it with Angela. I just connected with them a lot more than the SWAT team and the fucking annoying kids in the second film.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So that, I don't know why that's in the film. Why do they just shift gears and go to those kids? It's just such a boring.
I genuinely feel like they were just running out of steam with the SWAT team. Then it would have been a 60-minute movie.
I know, but it feels so disjointed.
It does.
Yeah.
And they're just a way. To me, it's a way that they didn't need them, but they connect to character. For the first film in who we don't see in the first film, but we know of them. Yeah. And to me, that cutaway to the blow-up sex doll did make me laugh, though. I did have a good giggle. This horrifying action scene leads to these like gory deaths, and then it's just a blow-up sex doll. And I was like, okay, that's pretty funny. I was like, okay, fair. Where are we going with this?
Some things are just always funny.
Some things are always funny. But it does end up connecting, but I agree. It's kind of a weird 15, 20 minutes of the film that is kind of like, I'm okay if these guys die. And I do feel like they managed to connect it all well in the third act when it leads to more of the possession and fine. But it's odd. Yeah.
For both films, I think once it gets into the possession stuff, I was so on board.
On board, yeah.
Like with the zombie stuff, and I'm like,
the first time you watched it, were you expecting generic zombie, or were you expecting it to go into the possession? Did that catch you by surprise, I guess?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, for sure. I was expecting just zombie.
Yeah, no, I think, it's obviously hard to think back that long, but I thought it was just, sort of back in the day, back when I was still young and hopeful.
And now I'm just young.
more head on my hair and less weight. But no, I think I was, expecting something very sort of, I think I probably watched it when like The Last of Us just came out, like the first game. Probably like 2013 or something like that.
Yeah, wow, yeah.
So like,
that's crazy to think The Last of Us is 10 years old.
I know, right?
Shit, yeah.
But yeah, I was sort of expecting more like an infected, like, because they do mention it's, like a variation of rabies almost.
Yeah. Kind of blaming it on the dog.
Yeah, the dog, because one of the couples that lives in the apartment, their dog is at the vet during that time, and they find out that the dog basically was, had something like rabies.
Like rabies, they say.
That that has then spread to the child, and then it's spread around, and the mum keeps saying that the child's got tonsillitis or something, and then it's like, does she though? Does she though?
I kind of want to, I guess, in line with what we do with the show as well, as kind of talk about what makes it sort of uniquely Spanish as well. And I was just looking up, in the same year, another big Spanish horror film came out with The Orphanage, which is kind of great. It's fantastic. Yeah. And actually, when you were teasing us for Rec, I actually thought you were going to say The Orphanage. I was like, that's a fucking great movie. Okay. Have you seen The Orphanage?
I think I did, maybe again around the same time.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but the biggest thing that has sort of, when I was watching, especially the first Rec, was that both films, especially the last 10 minutes of Rec, and there's a certain scene in The Orphanage in regards to a character turning back and forth to a wall and turning around and things are getting closer and stuff like that. And just the tension that's used, I feel like is something that is very noticeable in those two sorts of films. And tension is obviously something just in horror in general, is when it's utilized, it's great. But more so, I believe, especially in American horror films, it's all about the bang, jump scare. Maybe until James Wan sort of came out and started focusing more on the build up to scares. And I know, and there's definitely other horror directors who had, but in more the mainstream, James Wan, I guess, recently has moved away from the super, like, loads of jump scares, things jumping at the camera, loud screams, for quieter tension build ups. Whereas both Rec and The Orphanage, both Spanish horror films, really rely on that a lot in their films as well. So I don't know if you feel the same, not having seen The Orphanage or not really remembering it, but what do you think about the horror styling makes this one does it make it more uniquely like a Spanish film, or do you feel like it's different to what we see out of American horror?
I think the European connection of obviously like it being such a predominantly Catholic country and the relations to the Vatican, I don't know if that would have come across in the same way as it would in an American film.
Totally, yeah.
Obviously, you've got The Exorcist. I think this film has more in common with something like,
That died?
I think the camera just died. So,
oh no!
Well, if you're watching this, enjoy listening to the rest of the episode.
We're about to go into night vision.
If you're listening to the show, just pretend nothing happened because it's the exact same for you.
Adding to the spooky.
Yeah.
Do you know what would be great? So this is just for the audio listeners. Then we should put a jump scare in the video. That'd be pretty funny.
That's how we get no one coming back to watch our show.
These fuckers did that. Rec 5.
What the hell was I talking about? Oh yeah, The Exorcist. I think this has more in common with The Exorcist than a traditional zombie film like than Dawn of the Dead or something like that.
Totally, yeah. Or even The Walking Dead, right? Which is strictly, disease like orientated sort of zombie creations and stuff. Yeah.
I think Rec 1 is more tension than jump scares, and then 2 is definitely more jump scares than tension. Because in the first film, it becomes pretty obvious once all of these characters get locked in the apartment building that the people outside know something that we don't. They say you can't leave, get back from the windows or we're going to shoot you.
Oh man. Yeah. I love the use of the silhouettes. Like so they put this massive like plastic curtain down at the front door, and all the time you can just see this blinding light and these big silhouettes, and it's like these godlike creatures who have this control over the building now, and I just love the way that was shot.
Yeah. So it just creates this real tension, and it shows how quickly those situations can descend into chaos.
Totally, yeah.
Because it goes from these residents of the apartment are just concerned because they heard the old woman in the apartment downstairs screaming. Firefighters are there, news crews there. It's no big deal. Police are there to help out. Like it's just, nothing too major. And then it all kicks off. They all get locked in, and it's just every person for themselves.
Yeah.
Like everyone's screaming at each other, trying to get into fist fights, trying to grab the gun off of the one cop that's there. It's
so good.
And I think that's a great representation of, how people would probably behave in that situation.
Yeah.
Especially like there's elderly couples, there's children, there's, so I think it handles that really well. And I think that's, again, maybe why I didn't enjoy the second one as much, because I think it removes that character and that drama. And like you said, it is more like an action film.
Totally, yeah. Which I didn't hate. I mean, like I very much I was like the explosiveness of that second film. We were joking before we started recording that the end credits of both these movies are these like hectic punk rock songs. Yeah. And that's kind of to me what the second movie just feels like. Yeah, it's just like this. Yeah. It's the punk rock equivalent of the first film. It is. It's like the SWAT team don't give no shits. They're going in. They're shotgunning people in the. Well, I mean, firstly, one of the priests shotguns someone in the head. Which is
that's right. That's
mental.
right.
I was like, holy shit.
Because it's like the possessed child, isn't it?
It's a possessed,
And the SWAT team are like, I'm not shooting a kid, and the priest just like grabs shotgun, like bang. It's like
he's like, I'll do it. Shit, man. And like I said, we get the incredible bathroom sequence. They start trying to mow down the hordes of zombies, which is fun. They actually, I read this, they got all the original actors who do turn into zombies and direct back for the second one, literally just for the scenes when they're running around the stairs.
So it makes sense that it's the same people. Because that's the thing is, if you see someone, that's infected and it's like, oh, where did they come from?
Yeah.
It's a little thing, but it's like, it makes sense.
It makes sense.
In theory, there's only this small group of people that could be an infected person. It's the people that are in the apartment in the first film.
And there's about, I would say, maximum 10 of them, probably maybe a couple more than 10. And you get that sense here as well. Like the first one that really noticed to me that they fucking blast. It's like that Danny DeVito's like, anyway, I just started blasting.
That is this film.
That is literally
the tagline for Rec 2.
I just started blasting. Is Alex, the firefighter, because you see the fire, he's bald, so he's recognizable from that, but he's got the firefighter jacket on. and he sprints at one of these SWAT guys who's just mowing them down.
Oh, yeah.
And it's kind of like, that's cool. Like, I recognize you from the first film.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of exciting that the two directors, because it is co-directed, had that much care and wanted to be able to, create this universe. They were also behind. They split the directorial duties on them, but they made two more Rec movies after this, 3 and 4. Not as critically well received.
No,
Definitely a bit more of a please continue this franchise sort of thing. The third one is set at a wedding in which the vet who initially looks after the dog is bitten and then goes to a wedding and shenanigans. It's pretty much the second movie at a wedding. And then the fourth one is after everything's happened, they take people, someone specifically who survives these films, puts them on a carrier ship, and then shit goes down on a carrier ship.
Right, okay.
Which, but I love that it's that contained sort of location again.
So the third film has a 40% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah, the fourth one's better than the third one.
And then the fourth one, Rec 4 Apocalypse. What does this have?
Apocalypse, that's great.
Reception... 68%.
Yeah, okay.
But average rating of 5.3.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So the third one is
the third
one is the lowest.
Third one's trash because they actually go away from the point of view camera stuff.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, the thing that makes the film.
Exactly,
film.
right? Yeah, totally. So, you definitely don't have to see 3 or 4.
Because especially in that second one, even though it's still that handheld, there's some beautiful cinematography.
It's so well shot.
One shot, the bit where it goes on the ground and it's their feet.
Yes.
It's just stunning. Like,
it's a great way, like Kieran was saying as well, for the first one, when they put it still justifies the fact that why they're still recording.
There is a similar shot. I actually quite like that as well. There's a very similar shot in the first one.
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
so when it happens in the
I think that's what
second
you're saying
one-
when the cop says put the camera down, right? Yeah.
And
that's throwback.
the shot of both movies, though, I think for me, and it's a little bit of a spoiler, but I think we're well and truly into spoiler territory.
What? These not necessarily movies that have lots of options of what can happen by the end.
Yeah, I think we could tell you the entire plot of this film and it's still worth watching.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But there's the shot at the end of the first film that is the first shot of the second film, where the camera is on the ground in night vision mode, and Angela is sort of hiding underneath something and looking at the camera, and all you can see is just her, like terrified looking face, covered in blood and sweat, and her hair's a mess because she's just been through this whole ordeal. And then she just gets dragged backwards away from the camera, screaming into the darkness, and it is horrifying. We don't see anything other than her getting dragged away, but it is so scary.
And your assumption is like, oh, it's that cooked creature I saw a few minutes ago. But it's funny you say that being a slight spoiler, because for Rec and for Quarantine, that was central for the marketing. Those shots have been both of those trailers for Rec and Quarantine. It's the poster for Quarantine.
Yes, yeah.
I think it is final for some shot of the posters of Rec as well.
It's crazy, it's this iconic shot, and it's literally the last shot of the movie. Which, I mean, if you're watching the trailer and you don't have a lot of context, you could think like, oh, they might survive that, whatever. But
true.
It's very much so. And actually, before watching Rec, I went and watched, because it was released by Madman here, I went and watched their trailer online. The trailer's about 1:40. A lot of the trailer is the last 10 minutes of the movie. It's quite interesting. So with context, I sat there and I was like, oh, this is spoiling heaps, but I guess you don't have a lot of context.
Yeah.
It's okay to an extent. I mean, I know we all feel the same way about trailers. They're stupid.
5 minutes and, you don't need to watch the film.
No, exactly,
Yeah, Dune was probably the worst one, and it was so unavoidable because every time I went to the cinema,
it was playing. You don't do what me and Josh do? We close our eyes and cover our ears and look like we...
I think a couple of times we actually left the cinema, didn't we?
Before the Batman came out, trailer, we would... At all the preview screenings, we were like, and we're going to show you a trailer for the Batman. Josh and I would just get up and walk out.
Well, we did it. We went and saw something the other week, and they were showing a trailer for The Killer. And all three of us were just head down, eyes closed.
Didn't want to know. Just didn't want to know. So
stop making trailers 3 minutes long. They don't need to be.
Don't need to do it. I want to talk about Manuela Velasco as well, because I think she obviously is a central part of the first film, and her terrified acting is fantastic. I believe every scream, but then again, like when she's terrified, I also believe her when she's like, don't stop recording as well. Yeah. And she, as we were saying, is pretty much like the most well-known actor, at least in the first film as well. I don't know if we've seen anything she's done outside of this film, and I don't think so.
I think it's all Spanish language stuff as well.
All Spanish language, yeah. Oh, hey, breaking news. There's a rumor of a Rec 5 in development. Interesting.
Hold the phone.
So I guess we'll have to go and do 3 and 4 eventually, hey?
She's going to be in it.
And she's going to be in it. So, I mean, that does make sense, I guess. So, yeah, but she has a career dating back to, I mean, there's a credit for 1983, but 1996, she's been a staple of Spanish television with guest spots there, and she's been doing movies since 1987. She did a Pedro Almodovar film. Oh. So yeah, I mean, she's fantastic in the film, and I'm sure that she probably, when she came up on the screen for Spanish audiences, was probably a recognizable sort of, yeah.
But she's one of the only actors in the first film that even has a Wikipedia article. The only other one is Javier Botet, who plays the creature at the end of the film, and it seems like he plays like a lot of those kind of roles.
Recently, he did Dracula in Voyage of the Demeter. He was, Dracula in that. Yeah.
So there you go. So it's like he's the, if you need someone to play a big creepy monster,
Javier Botet. Yeah, because he's very tall and very lanky, and he's a bit of a contortionist as well.
Guy.
Yeah.
Is that, or is this someone else?
No, this is someone else. This is Jonathan Mellor, sorry, who is the priest in the second film.
Yes. That makes sense
as well. Yeah. So he's done Spanish films, American films, just a couple.
Manuela Velasco plays Angela. No one in this film is winning an Oscar for their acting.
No.
But she is really good.
She's great.
And I think when you're looking at her for 80% of the film, you need someone who is going to be a good and believable audience insert, because she is, our eyes and ears. We only see what Angela sees pretty much. We only know what Angela knows. We don't get any external context or anything like that.
Yeah.
So I think she does a really good job of being that audience insert. And like you said, being really genuine and believable.
Yeah.
And it is that mix between she's in a absolutely terrifying situation fighting for her life, but also she's like, this is going to be my big scoop. This is going to be the story that makes my career if I ever get out.
If she does, well, watch the second film. Maybe you'll find out. I guess, was there anything else you guys really wanted to touch on before we start wrapping it up and comparisons to other Spanish films? I guess with Spanish cinema as well. This is our first film from Spain. I guess
there's similarities for Mexico for sure. Obviously the language.
Yes, totally. Yeah.
I just sort of looked up other Spanish horrors. The Platform on Netflix.
I did not mind The Platform.
I love that. Actually.
I like the abstract idea of it. Yeah.
Have you seen The Platform? I Live In?
I have. I think The Platform is a good concept with okay execution.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah.
The Skin I Live In.
Is that Antonio Banderas?
Yeah, Pedro Almodovar as well.
I remember loving that film.
That's a cooked movie.
It certainly is.
That is a messed up film.
Really, really good.
It is well made though, yeah. But again, that's Almodovar for you.
Yeah.
He's
but they haven't done too much.
So yeah, I guess like Spanish horror is sort of untouched, but it's funny that out of everything we were just sort of talking about, Rec seems to be the one that focuses on, again, that religious horror aspect and the one of the stereotypical tropes for American horror is when Catholicism is at play, or even exorcism films, they'll go to Mexico or they'll go to Spain, and there'll be the Spanish woman with the incense, and she's just reciting the Hail Marys and stuff. Like it's obviously the religious aspect of it is such a predominant thing in Spain that it is used probably not to a great effect in American horror films, but to have one come out of Spain that almost to me potentially probably just subverted the tropes and played with the idea of it a bit, as being like, here's your zombie film, bang, also here's our religious aspect.
I do like how that shifts.
I think it works so well. Yeah,
I don't think I've seen that before.
No, not to that extent.
Into that
and done well. I guess as well. That's the main thing.
I think And I think the thing is with the first film especially is it could have worked either way. So without the reveal of the demonic possession stuff, it's still equally as effective and terrifying, I think.
Yep.
But it does, when it starts hinting at those things and then we sort of get the reveal at the end, it still remains equally as scary, but as I was saying, just for different reasons. Yeah. Do we want to talk about the second film and I guess the reveal?
Yes.
In that.
Yeah, yep.
Which I think the shot is really cool when you find out that Angela is alive. Yeah. And it comes right at the end of the teenagers segment, I guess, because you could call it segments, right? It's the SWAT team, then the teenagers. Angela comes out, and then that's when things start wrapping up. And she's getting interrogated. She's like, "Who are you? What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm a TV reporter. We've been here. I've been trying to like hide away and stuff." And the reveal, the twist is that when she gets dragged away at the end of the film, the creature, the initially like possessed girl, I guess.
Yeah, that was the little girl.
That was the little girl that the Vatican are trying to get the blood of. Spits into her mouth, basically.
Like a slug?
And it's like this parasite.
Yeah, it's really gross.
It basically transfers the possession
into her. Angela. And then I love the final bit of the film when she then, because it's like the last shot is a flashback basically to when that's happening, and she hears the SWAT team enter and Angela begins to like scurry away and hide away. But yeah, Angela is now possessed and ultimately has, I guess for lack of a better word, like won in the movie, you know what I mean? Like they're all dead and Angela's still alive with this parasite,
and
with
then
this demon in her.
She gets herself out of the building.
That's right.
Sort of off screen. We know she's going to get out of the building.
Yes.
And she's going to potentially spread this infection, the possession everywhere.
To the world, which plays into Rec 4.
Okay.
That's where.
Okay.
So she's the main character again of Rec 4. They... for comparison.
It sounds like you could probably just forget 3 and just go from 2 to 4.
No, because Rec 4 is like the Avengers. They get all the best hitters. They get all the big hitters from all 3 movies, and they all just happen to be on this one ship. So
remember Alex? He's back.
He's in this real Nick Fury style way, like comes out of the fucking shadows. Well, that's how Angela's revealed in the second film. She comes out of the shadows, and then the camera's slowly zooming in. It's on her face.
I just love that Marvel's trying to get Robert Downey Jr. back, and they're like, "Can we get Pablo?" Has anybody seen Pablo? Does anyone know what he's up to?
But there's characters from Rec 3 who then come into Rec 4 and they do this kind of like, this big wreck off. They wreck off each other. But it's to me, it's cool. It makes sense as to why they did it, and I don't think it's to the detriment of the film. It doesn't make the ending of Rec any less impactful. I think bringing Angela back, because they at least went like, I feel like it would have been more detrimental if she was like, "No, I got away." Like, no, it's cool. You've made the hero of your first film the villain of the second film, and that's cool. Like, I don't mind when try and take a chance, Hollywood. We don't mind seeing, and
it's a twist that I liked. I find with twists like that, they can so often come across as just really cheap and gimmicky.
Yeah.
But I actually thought it was really effective, really surprising, and made sense.
Yeah.
And leaned into the horror with that gross ass scene of the parasite going mouth to mouth. That was disgusting.
Yeah, a little bit of baby birding going on there.
Baby birding going on.
One thing I did like in the first film is the sort of paranoia that sets in amongst all of the residents, and you've got one of the residents, is an older Spanish guy who's blaming the Chinese immigrants that are living in the building and sort of being quite racist about it, being like, those immigrants, like they must have brought some disease in there.
They're leaving the door open.
Always like weird smells coming out of their apartment.
And I love the tension between that, because the Chinese family do not speak Spanish as well. They're speaking Chinese. Yeah, and that language barrier there also creates, because they they're terrified, no fucking idea what's going on, and they have kids with them as well.
Yeah,
so it just adds another level. I like that element of the film too.
And then you've got other people like blaming the parent with the child that's got tonsillitis,
Jennifer.
And then other people are blaming the dog that got sent to the vet. So like there's all this. It's like very, not that it's kids, but it's like Lord of the Flies-esque, and it's just like this whole ecosystem.
One thing they all agree on, that there's weird shit happening upstairs. Everyone just knows about it. They're like, it's just this upstairs thing. Like, none of us have really tried to do anything about it, but upstairs is weird.
Did you contact the Body Corp?
Oh man, it's great. They're both tension-filled films, but the first one especially more so. Did you Want to elevator pitch this one for us?
I reckon I've sobered up enough for this.
We're screaming the praises, so this should be an easy pitch.
Yeah.
77 minutes long. Woo.
So, if you like horror films, watch Rec. If you like found footage films, watch Rec. Even if you don't like found footage films, I think it can convince you that they're good. I think it's probably one of the most effective and genuine examples of found footage that I've seen. It's scary, it's tense, it's just really well crafted, and the fact that it's able to pack all of that into, less than 80 minutes is pretty incredible. There's no wasted time, no wasted shots, and I probably would have been happy for it to be a bit longer, but I think it works so well as it is. And I think if you are a horror fan and you've not watched Rec, you're doing yourself a disservice.
Agreed. 100% agreed. What would your score be then?
So, should we do our scores for the first film and then scores for the second film?
I think that's a good way of doing it. Yeah.
4 out of 5 for the first film.
Nice.
I'm probably only going to go 3.
Wow.
Yeah.
Why do you hate this movie, Josh?
I don't hate it, but for me, it's only the last 10 minutes.
That you really loved,
I feel like the rest of it is, for me, it was really dated.
Okay, yeah.
I didn't find it at all scary.
It's so funny you say that because I rewatched Paranormal Activity over Halloween and I felt the same thing. I felt it was actually very dated and not as... It's a movie where nothing happens. So it's quite interesting that I see it that way.
The last 10, like with the elevator pit, I think anyone should go and watch this because mainly for that last 10 minutes.
Yeah,
it is fantastic.
It's exceptional.
Yeah, that's, like I said earlier, that is probably 10 of the scariest minutes that I have seen in a film. Like, I can think of scarier films as a whole.
Yeah.
But purely if you were to just crop 10 minutes out of a horror film.
Yeah.
That's up there. That's up there with stuff from like the Descent, which is a scary ass movie.
The Descent,
that's one of my favorites.
And it's another similar sort of vibe.
Yeah,
like if you like The Descent, Rec is
Yeah.
absolutely something you should
And
watch.
I also just thought the host.
Oh, the Bong Joon-ho. Oh no,
No.
sorry, the host.
Host.
The Zoom call
Recently.
movie.
Have you seen
I've
that?
not seen
You
it.
would
No.
love it. And you know what? 60 minutes long.
Love that.
Love it.
Basically found footage.
It's all a Zoom. It's all
Zoom.
recorded on
Yeah.
a Zoom call. And
It
people are
is-
moving there.
That scared the hell out of me.
The face filter scene is one of the best jump scares of all time. I would
Certainly is.
say, yeah.
Before we do our scores for Rec 2, I just thought of it then.
Oh, 4, by the way. Sorry, even I forgot. I was like, oh, was it? No.
Glad someone is on the ball. Films that are similar, not necessarily Spanish films, but I think, we talked about Blair Witch.
Yep.
We talked about Paranormal Activity, The Exorcist.
Yes, yeah.
And now just Host. Is there any other films, that you would say, if you like this, watch?
I would say the closest out of all of them is The Descent. Because it's that use of a claustrophobic space.
Yeah.
It's great creature designs. We have the found footage aspect, the night vision aspect as well. I think The Descent is probably like the closest you would get.
That is up there with.
You can take The Descent part 2 if you want as well.
I've not seen it, but that
It's
first
not bad.
Descent film is one of the
Just a
best.
shout out, if you are watching The Descent, please look for the UK version because the US version changed the ending.
Yeah.
And the US version ending is shit.
Oh.
It's a happy ending, and The Descent is not a movie you want a happy
No.
ending for. You want the UK version.
Okay.
Yeah.
The only issue is that The Descent Part 2 carries on from the US version.
Right, okay.
You
So
need
just-
the US
Just
version.
don't watch the part 2.
So just don't watch Part 2.
But there you go. I think that's a solid list of,
And now I kind of really want to watch The Descent.
Yeah,
again.
I
I'm
really
excited
do.
for
I
it.
love that
It's
film.
but I think the last 10 minutes of Rec are horrifying.
Yeah, terrifying.
Like it's proper watch it through, between your fingers sort of stuff. It's
Just the tension is just unbearable.
yeah.
Yeah.
And because there's no score throughout the entire film, is there?
Oh, no.
No music at all.
No music.
Because obviously
No, you're right.
they can't
Because
have
they can't be.
anything that's non-diegetic.
No.
Yeah.
that's right.
That's it.
Yeah.
So I think
Yeah.
you're in these, rooms with the night vision. It's just completely silent, except you
That's impressive,
Fucking
actually.
man.
to not have a score for an entire
a
film.
horror, like for tension and.
Well, you think
That
about
is
how
impressive.
many jump scares are audio based.
Yeah, massive.
Not necessarily visual. It's, they'll turn around and
just
something will
tension
fall
as
off a
well.
shelf.
Yeah, true.
Tension
Yeah.
as well, like the
Yeah.
build up of like a background music. Yes.
I hadn't even thought about that fact, but
that's
it's.
really-
I think that makes it more impressive. Rec 2 scores.
Yes.
Josh?
I actually liked it more, so I go 3.5.
Okay.
I don't know if I was just in the mood for a bit more action.
Yeah.
It's nowhere near as good, but like the Raid kind of vibes with
It's the
SWAT
raid
team.
with zombies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, 3.5. I actually quite enjoyed
it. Yeah. I'm a 3.5 as well. Like to me, I don't like it as much as the first film, but I love the action aspect of it. I think it's just such. Again, it's 80 minutes long.
Yeah,
it's explosive. The only thing that I feel like is a bit of fat that can be trimmed is the teenagers. And even though they are them worked into the plot, like in fairness, slight spoiler, like there's 3 teenagers, 2 of them are killed and one of them is used very heavily then in the last act. But you could have worked that a little bit better as well. But 3.5 for me.
Yeah. I went with a 3.
Yep, that's fair.
There was a lot of things I liked about it. You know, between the priest blowing a kid's head off with a shotgun.
Yeah. I mean, shit, man. And that's 5 stars on its own.
And like the bathroom scene that we talked about, and again, the last sort of 10 or 15 minutes when they're in the penthouse with Angela, like that's all great. But those teenagers really dragged it down for me. I wanted to punch them all in the face.
Which is not abnormal for teenagers in horror films, by the way. So
No. Yeah. And like, I don't think it's anything wrong with their performances. I just found their characters so insufferable that I hated watching them.
Yeah, totally.
You know, so it was like, you're going to die and I'm looking forward to it.
I just keep thinking about that bathroom scene shot, man. I love the framing of that shot. It's such a cool idea. And then leading up to its climax, its literal explosive climax. I was like, that is just, again, happens to a character that you love, which makes it heartbreaking, but fuck, it's just such a good scene. That visual of them all breaking through the door. Love it. So, but I would definitely recommend it as a double feature as well.
Especially because they're so short.
Did any of us watch it back to back or no?
Yeah.
You did?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like that would really work actually.
Yeah. So I did them because my partner does not do horror films at all. We went and saw The Shining at cinemas about 2 years ago. I'm still hearing about it.
Wow, yeah. I mean, that's a creepy movie, but it's no real jump scares or anything in there.
So, yeah, as soon as I was like, "Are you going to watch Wreck with me?" She's like, "No." So she was out one night, so I was like, "All right, we're going like double feature, back to back, lights off, Home Alone." It was good, and because they are so short, and they literally, as I said, the last shot of the first film is the first shot of the second film. They go back to back. The whole thing, if you watch them, together is. What do we reckon? Like just over 2.5 hours?
So it's 77 minutes and 84 minutes. So yeah, just under 2.5 hours.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I mean, you'd watch 2 or 3 episodes of TV in that time or a long movie.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
If you're going to watch them and you've got the time, back to back, I think is a good,
definitely worth it.
Good way to do it.
It's like thinking about that. It's that 60 minutes of build up to the last 10 minutes of the first, and then you're into this like full action kind of.
And I think if you think about them as one film as well, it is almost like the first 60 minutes of Wreck is the first act.
Yeah.
And then you've got, the last bit of Wreck, and then sort of most of Wreck 2 is the middle, and then the
finale when you find out everything that's happening. Yeah.
So I think if you think of it that way as well, it does. It does make a bit more sense.
Yeah. Cool. Well, that was Wreck and Wreck 2, our first film from Spain.
First double feature and our first horror. First all around.
What an episode.
Camera went off.
No, they weren't, unfortunately, no.
First dual directed film as well, maybe?
No,
Delicatessen.
Delicatessen, yeah.
But yes, so obviously thank you for watching on YouTube and thank you for listening.
Watching half of it.
Watching half of it, yes. Yeah. Sorry about that jump scare that we put in there. Ooh. But this is the December episode, and because we are a monthly podcast, you'd probably think, I'm so sad I won't be able to listen to that 1 inch barrier at all for the rest of 2023. Well, you're in luck. Because we are going to do a Christmas special, a Christmas episode that'll be coming out a couple of days before Christmas. So we deliberated. And by deliberated I mean we all sat around this computer and Googled international Christmas movies, and we chose one that I think's quite unique and going to be another first animated film, which we're going to do on the next episode of that 1 inch barrier, Tokyo Godfathers, which is set on Christmas Eve, and it's about 3 homeless people living on the streets of Tokyo who discover a newborn baby amongst the trash and set out to find its parents. Now, I haven't seen Tokyo Godfathers.
No, I haven't.
I've not seen any of Satoshi Kon's
his films. But Paprika and Perfect Blue, so he's very popular within the sort of anime film space. But it's a Christmas themed one, so I think I'm excited to cover that. So that'll be
sounds a bit like The Broker.
A little bit actually, doesn't it? Hey, which is another great movie, which we're very excited to do. So that'll be the Christmas episode, and then we'll be back in full swing as per normal in January, which I think will be a New Year's Day episode.
I think the year does start on a Monday, doesn't it?
Yes,
it does indeed.
So 1st of January, we'll be back and it will be Nick's
my pick. So to tease out my pick and then tell you what it is, but I'll tease it first. So there's a movie. I don't know if you boys have seen my Letterboxd profile, but very controversially, in the 4 favorites.
Oh, I know what I already knew.
Yes, you already guessed it.
And I fucking loved it. Yep, go.
I think I know what this is.
4 favorites, I actually have one film. I have one film. And it's my favorite film because I saw it at a very formative time in my cinematic upbringing. And that movie is The Departed.
Yes.
Also known as The Departed.
The Departed. Park the car and have it. Yeah, you fucker, cocksucker, motherfucker.
We're going to do the whole podcast in that accent.
I'm not a fucking cop.
Such a quotable movie.
That movie's, I don't know if you know this, is American. So it doesn't qualify for the podcast. So yeah, I don't know if that accent, you can tell, but it's an American.
I had to watch it with subtitles.
But you may not know, but you probably do know, that it's actually a remake of a film from Hong Kong. And that film is Infernal Affairs.
Yes.
Controversially, I have never seen Infernal Affairs.
This is good then.
So I'm excited to watch the movie that inspired my favorite movie of all time. So it's an early 2000s crime thriller, highly regarded, critically acclaimed.
Because I saw this at the cinema when it came out.
Wow, okay, that's exciting.
When they did The Departed, I was like,
okay, you were excited to see what they were doing.
To fill. Yeah.
Fair, well, and that's what I've heard.
Yeah,
so is my favorite film of all time about to be dethroned by its predecessor. So Infernal Affairs, Hong Kong crime thriller. And I'm interested to talk about how, because obviously Hong Kong being in China, you could say it's a Chinese film, but when you look at cinema, there is actual... I was looking at it today. It's very interesting the way China do split up their cinema of Hong Kong, cinema of Taiwan, and cinema of China. Okay. So I think that'll be an interesting discussion as well.
Well,
so
because it was a British colony as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of English influence in Hong Kong.
Yes,
I think most people in Hong Kong are bilingual.
Yep.
So it's a really interesting country to cover films from. Funny little anecdote about Infernal Affairs.
Yes,
mate of mine loves The Departed. Did the same thing as you. He's like, I want to watch the film that The Departed was based on. Watched Internal Affairs.
Oh, very nice. Great. Yeah.
Which is a 1990 film starring Richard Gere and Andy Garcia.
Yes.
Very confused why it was apparently a remake.
Where the fuck did The Departed come out of that?
Finished watching it and realised that he'd watched the wrong film.
Did you like Internal Affairs?
It never came up.
So if you are watching along at home, obviously watch Tokyo Godfathers and then make sure you watch Infernal Affairs.
At the top of the Wikipedia page, it literally says not to be confused with the 2002 Hong Kong film.
It does.
That's fantastic.
And then Infernal Affairs, there's a trilogy.
It's a trilogy, yeah.
Yeah.
We're not doing all 3.
No, we won't. No.
How long's Infernal Affairs?
I think it's about 2 hours.
Yeah, okay.
I think it's 2 hours. So reasonable. But that'll be our January episode. But obviously before then, we'll be celebrating Christmas together in the best way we know how by talking about foreign cinema. Again, thank you all for watching. You can find all of our social medias and our Letterboxd accounts in the description below. And we'll see you on the next episode of That 1 Inch Barrier.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.